Right then, how's it going? It's me, Shotty4HF, and I just thought I would do a short video on this plugin here, and it's an SSL style compressor. Now, I've never used an SSL or the compressor that's built into those mixing desks, so I can't do a comparison, but I have been using this one for a while, and you can go and get this one for free. Now, I say it's free, but really the creator is on patreon.com, and if you download any of these plugins and you like them and you use them, you should really go and support the creator, because that is what Patreon is all about, supporting creators so that they can do more of what they enjoy, and in this case especially more of what they are good at. And with that said, I will leave a link in the description so you can go and check out this guy if you haven't already. And as far as I know, it is one guy that's making these plugins. It's not a big company or anything like that. I'm not 100% sure on that. Maybe somebody could put me right in the comments. But definitely, I've downloaded a few of these plugins and I think they are great. So the reason I thought I'd do a video on this plugin is because, of course, you have the kind of standard compressor controls. And, I would have thought if you're watching this video, you probably used a compressor before. So you're probably aware of these these parameters that most compressors will have, but it also has this additional section on the side over here with maybe a few more parameters that you don't necessarily see on some other compressors. So it's those that I was going to focus on. But just to go over the basics, you have your typical threshold, makeup gain, the attack and release, and the ratio, of course, and the dry wet mix for kind of parallel compression, and bringing back in some of the dry signal to taste, so you can balance it that way. Let's just have a quick listen to the compressor on some material, just so I can sort of check the volume, make sure everything's working. And as you can hear there, it is doing exactly what you'd expect a compressor to do. And obviously, if I pull back the attack and sort of speed that up, then it's going to catch those transients and really kind of, remove some of the dynamic range, or a little bit more of the dynamic range. So it really is very good. And as I say, it does everything you would expect a compressor to do. So moving on to this section over here then. Down here we have FLT and TR. This stands for the filter section. And this, interestingly, is the transient section, is what that stands for. Okay, we have the usual kind of high pass filter section, which you do find on a lot of other compressors. And I don't know if you know, so I'll just tell you that this is great if you're compressing a track, or maybe even drums or something like that, on a bus, that when you turn this up to sort of 500 hertz, it leaves the bass alone, so you can have a lot of compression in sort of the high-end frequencies, but it really lets the bass come through. And this is great sometimes for making a track kind of more full in the low end. I've done it before, and kind of you pull down the threshold, turn up the high pass filter, and all of a sudden it's like you've turned up the bass in the track, because everything else is being kind of leveled off by the compression, but the bass and the low mids really come to life. So that's interesting, but it is kind of standard. You do see that a lot on some of the compressors. It also has a mid section for boosting, and I am assuming a little bit here, but boosting detection in the mids. So it's the classic kind of sidechain thing with a compressor, the filter section. So when you turn up the mids, the compressor is responding more to the mid-range in the material that's going through it. And obviously turning down the mids will obviously have the opposite effect, but that means then that the compressor is less sensitive to the mid-range area. So with that, you're kind of going to get more compression in the lows and the tops. It's going to be kind of focused on those areas. So that's something already that is handy to have, in addition to everything else. Now, this one up here, I'm not really sure why it has a % symbol at the top. But as far as I'm aware, this is around about 10K 10 kilohertz kind of control. And I'll show you just by listening to it that when I pull this all the way around to where it says HF, it sounds to me like it's focusing much more compression on that top end area. Okay, so it's really sort of focusing the compression there, and it almost sounds like it's kind of turning down the high frequency area. And I'll just show you what I mean on this track that I've got playing through it at the moment. We'll just add a bit more compression just so you can really hear the difference. You can hear how the top end and the hi-hats and the treble really starts to sort of get, you know, compressed and turned down in that way. Bring it back. Yeah, that really does focus a lot of compression in that top end. If I'm right on that, of course, if I get any of this wrong, you know, I'm always learning. Please do put me right in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. If there's anything I've missed, also let me know. I always look forward to the comments, so thank you for that. Okay, sort of moving on then to this transient section. So if you turn up the boost, it makes it more sensitive to transient material. Okay, so anything popping out the mix. And of course, with a compressor, you can kind of control some of that with a faster attack time. But with this boost section over here, this gives an additional focus on those transients, okay? Which is sometimes, you know, definitely helpful in certain situations. Okay, so then we have the tilt. This will change whether the focus is in either the highs or the lows, okay? So by tilting this up, as you can see by this sort of line here, it's denoting that you are focusing the transients. You are turning up the top end. So I would assume everything past kind of 800 possibly, or, you know, 1 kilohertz, possibly even lower. So let me give you an example as to what I mean by that. So let's say you want to focus the transient area on the hi-hats, okay, or a particular hi-hat jumping out, or maybe the top layer of the snare or something like that. By turning up the tilt, you are then focusing on those transients in that frequency area and in that frequency range. So by turning it down to -6, as you can see here, you're actually turning up the low end. So then this would focus on those transients in the low end region, like kick, for example, like the kick drum, or the lower end of the snare, it's kind of around 200 hertz. So then it would focus on those transients in those areas, which is definitely an interesting thing. I have quite a few compressors that I use on a regular basis, but this is the only one with this feature, this boost on the transients, to focus on the transients, and then the ability to change where that focus is on the highs or the lows with a nice simple tilt option there. And of course, with the focus boosted on the transients, you then have to bring that in with the dry and wet mix. So you can boost, but then increase that or decrease it with the dry wet mix over there. So you can sort of bring that into taste, you know, so you don't just boost and then it's boosting too much. You can actually kind of almost like with this sidechain effect, but it's almost like parallel, you know, you can bring back some of the dry signal and some of the focused signal as well. So sort of moving on from that, turbo, this button up here, well, I'll just say for now that the main section bypasses the whole thing. So that's fairly straightforward. Now this turbo button here actually helps for the compressor to affect the full frequency range of the material. Because I think the way it is kind of defaulted, there's a particular focus or slightly more focus on the kind of mid-range area. Possibly not just the mids, but maybe sort of rolling off in the low end and the top end. So it's, you know, so you've got that nice sort of curve, for example, so that if there is anything sort of down around sort of 30 hertz or 40 hertz, this compressor's not going to respond to that particularly. It is going to be focused more in that middle region. But pressing the turbo button will help this compressor to affect the full frequency range of the material. And again, it is just handy to maybe, try that. If you've already I imagine anyway, if you've already sort of band past, those areas, you've already put your low pass and high pass on to roll off at those frequencies, to bring through some of the mids, then you might not need this compressor to do that, especially if the compressor's after that sort of filtering, or maybe you're using like some tape emulation, some sort of saturation on the mids. You can press the turbo button and the compressor is then more responsive to the full range of frequencies going through it. So again, it's just an interesting feature to have, which I have to say on all the other compressors that I use, I haven't seen that. So definitely interesting. And this, the Xformer, is actually transformer emulation. Now, I have noticed some differences with this, especially when compressing heavily. This compressor does tend to add some kind of saturation. It does color the sound slightly, but I have to say, I don't use this compressor to compress anything too heavily. I am doing in this example and in this video to sort of, I'm exaggerating it slightly to show you the differences, but generally I use this gently. I don't very often go sort of below 4, definitely try not to go more than 8 dB in gain reduction. That's, on whatever I'm using it on. But definitely the more you start to really compress this, I mean, the ratio goes up to 10, so it's 10:1 ratio, that's a lot of compression. And sort of when you do start really heavily compressing some material, you do get this almost like a saturation harmonic, distortion tone coming through, which is nice, but you don't want it all the time. And I have used this compressor in various situations. Okay, so I have used it on drum buses. I have used it on the 2 bus, on the sort of main mix, in some cases, but only gently. And I've also used it quite a lot on vocals, and I get good results. I find myself using this more and more. It really is quite gentle on the CPU. It doesn't use a huge amount of CPU. So, for that reason, it's starting to become one of my go-to compressors. And again, you can go and grab this for free over at patreon.com. There's a link in the description. But of course, if you do like this plugin, then, please support the creator. It's not a sponsor, by the way. It's not, an affiliate link or anything like that. Just genuinely, I am really impressed with what this creator is doing. But definitely go and check it out and support the creator if you can, because that is what Patreon is all about. And I would definitely like to see this particular creator carry on doing this work and coming out with some of these great plugins. So that's it for this video. I literally just wanted to go over this additional section in a bit more detail, because when I first opened up this plugin and I looked at this, apart from the, the high pass filter, which I'd seen before, the rest of it wasn't that self-explanatory. So yeah, as I've looked and read up on this and sort of figured a few things out for myself, I thought I would share it in case anybody else is using this and is wondering what this section is doing exactly. And I hope I've got everything right. Of course, like I've said, if I haven't, please do correct me in the comments. Let me know what you've learned yourself, and let me know what you've figured out. I'm always interested to hear it. So I'll leave it there for this video. It's Shotty for HF Records. Nice one. Keep creating.